Okay, it looks like it's starting to record.
Awesome. Yeah, and I apologize in advance if you hear bells or announcements. I'm still at school, so just a heads up for that. Yes.
What school has such a established greenhouse?
It's Friendship Tech Prep. It's in Congress Heights.
Okay. Well, we'll follow up on that later. You know, I'm very interested in urban farming. So, okay, let's get to this. Appreciate the PowerPoint. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Yep. Okay. So, yeah, thank you for taking the time to meet with us. This is an issue that over 1,000 DC residents have signed on in support of, and something that we're passionate enough to take time out of our work days to present on this. So just a little bit of a backdrop on what's been happening in Southwest. The Southwest Neighborhood Plan, which was released in 2015, captured what Southwest residents wanted or how they wanted the neighborhood to develop. And part of that was that they didn't want urban renewal again. They wanted Southwest to remain an exemplary model of equity and inclusion. And specifically, they said that residents overwhelmingly expressed their desire to maintain the economic and racial diversity that makes the community so strong and vibrant. However, that's not what's played out. So over the last 20 years, the white population has increased 157%, while the black population has gone down over 20%. Our planning area has led the city in the number of units coming online, but they've had the second fewest number of affordable units. So it's kind of predictable that the demographics would shift the way that they have. The median price of homes has increased 55%, and the median household income of residents has increased 117%. So we're not seeing what we wanted to see play out in the Southwest Neighborhood Plan. So we can go to the next slide. And the current plans for 4th and M are more of the same. It would be 2 buildings, a little under 600 units, and 8% of those units would be affordable. The building on the east side would have a community center that would have a free 30-year lease. And so there's some issues with that. And one of the main issues is the loss of the community or the communal gathering spot that has been formed at 4th and M, especially in the west line. We've had farmers markets there, which Lee will talk about it on the next slide, but we've had farmers market there. We've had festivals there. It's been a casual lounge area that I don't think can be replicated in any other place in Southwest. And then again, it's just more of the same. It's more expensive, small rental housing. I assume that there would be some more shops, but with the community land trust, that allows the residents to actually determine what goes there, rather than we've been dictated. We've been bombarded with all these different stores, but we haven't had a say in those stores. With the community land trust, that allows us to have control over our actual neighborhood. And so the benefits of 4th and M I think they make sense. And Lee, you can take it from here.
All right. Yeah. The benefits in terms of public space and people enjoying the space are I think pretty obvious. If you've been down here anytime on a Saturday morning or Friday night when they have the Friday markets, that kind of speaks for itself. But I think that there's a lot of less tangible economic benefits that maybe go under the radar. Just the sheer number of markets that are held, that's a lot of revenue that's happening. That includes sales tax, food handling licenses and permits that are required for all of the vendors. That's direct revenue to DC, and that's been happening on lots that have been vacant for years. Otherwise there would have been no such economic activity happening on those lots. And then there's a lot of kind of indirect economic benefits that really help the community and the city in general. Most of the vendors, especially at the Friday night markets, are DC residents. They're entrepreneurs, they're makers. There's musicians and artists as well. And they're the folks who have a hard time paying for the expensive retail storefronts that are newer in the area, but they can afford to set up a booth here and sell and be able to get some income. These markets also attract, and other events that take place on these lots, on the west lot, attract visitors. They're an attraction for new residents. I honestly have only been in Southwest as a resident for a little over a year, and one of the things that definitely attracted me to it was having this kind of community forum and this community space with all these events, because I'd been to the market before. I'd really liked the concerts that take place there. And this is a very highly visible location. So you have, even if somebody, doesn't stop at the farmer's market on a Saturday, they're just going from Waterfront Station over to the wharf or wherever, they see it, they recognize it, they think, oh, that's a really cool, thing to have here. And then they may be more likely to, come back and visit or decide to rent here. And then there's add-on spending at neighboring restaurants, neighboring businesses, and public health benefits, which I think really are maybe not as much appreciated as they should be. But we know that the farmers market, especially through the SNAP and WIC program, can provide access to fresh, local, healthy food for tons of people in the neighborhood. And in addition to that, several of the vendors donate leftover produce to the Ward 6 Mutual Aid group that then distributes it for free to Southwest residents in need every single weekend. And that's a huge benefit for many of these, seniors on fixed incomes, other low-income people. And then there's other events, book sales, there's DC State Fair there. And all of these are events that take place on this western lot that are very site-specific. They wouldn't have the same amount of visitorship and economic activity in a less visible spot. Or somewhere that's further away from Metro, or that isn't, at this crossroads of DC, that doesn't have the stage and the seating and the sheer size and capacity that other much smaller public areas in Southwest have. So it's a pretty rare spot. Coy, do you want to jump in with some of this stuff too?
Yeah, sure. And so then there's also there's financial justification for the DC government to purchase these lots. So the DC government set aside $50 million to build 3 to 4 parks in the Noma neighborhood, $14 million to revamp the Eastern Market Metro space, $13 million to redesign Dave Thomas Circle, and then they put in a $2 million bid for a dog park in Columbia Heights. The CFO recently announced that there'd be almost $500 million in additional revenue from last year, and the DC government is planning on using eminent domain to bring a much-needed grocery store in Ward 7. And we think that the same justifications that were used for all these different other projects should be applied to Southwest, especially given the fact that this would be community ownership of land, which is huge. This is in gentrifying cities all across the U.S., community land trusts are popping up as a solution. So regardless of the justice issue, this is a fundamental possibility to allow residents to have a say in their neighborhood, which I think is hugely important. That's a game changer. So we can go on to the next slide. And this is an example that Lee is familiar with in another city where they did this.
Yeah, and I'll just mention real quick, this is a very well-established community land trust, the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative in Boston, Massachusetts. I worked a bit with them several years ago. They, as with pretty much all community land trusts, it's a community-governed entity. Folks from the neighborhood, especially Black and Cape Verdean folks are on the board of the organization, and they build permanently affordable housing. They build something like 225 different units and, over several years or a couple of decades. They have open space that is also a priority. So it's not just about affordable housing, but also recognizing the value of parks, playgrounds, community gardens to people in the neighborhood, and that you don't just you need permanently affordable housing that's not going to create development and displacement. You need to have community say, but you also need to have public spaces where people can come together, where they can grow fresh food. So they built a greenhouse on a vacant lot, very similar to the one at 4th and M, right in the center of the neighborhood. They also have a town common plaza that the DSNI Land Trust controls, and it's the site of the farmers market. They've had concerts there, other events. And so I think this is a model that could apply pretty well to this kind of site. That this is a community-governed organization that is already aware of the need to steward space and create and maintain and keep affordable housing, but also the need for green space and the need for community facilities that allow people to come together.
And so then our main ask is that option A, which we think is the best option, is that the DC government purchase the parcels, transfer ownership to the Douglas Community Land Trust to allow community ownership, stewardship, and the possibility of permanently affordable housing and retail, and allow residents to have a say in their neighborhood. Another option would be to purchase the parcels and hold them as government property and engage and have a truly community engaged in conversation on the future of the parcels. And then the last option is use whatever power leverage the DC government has to bring the developer back to the table and have a real conversation about the project and about the community benefit. Because this is my opinion, the community center, which was proposed as the community benefit agreement, to me, it came out of nowhere, and I feel like I've been paying attention to the local politics in Southwest. And we already have spaces that kind of replicate that. We have a brand new library that has tons of spaces. We have all these churches that have community meeting spaces. So a community center with a 30-year free lease, I don't think is the best use of the community benefit agreement. And there wasn't, in my opinion, I've been involved with this since 2017, there wasn't a real conversation about what to do with the space. The developer was allowed to sit on the land for over a decade, then wanted to switch it. It was initially zoned for commercial buildings. Then they were allowed to switch to residential. And we say, well, the needs have changed as well. So then the community should have a say in as those needs have changed. And so those are our asks and we think that there's, this would go down in history as a great win for the Southwest neighborhood, which has been on the short end of the stick of all this development, which is kind of ironic because it's the initial place of urban renewal. And we've seen like a second wave of that without bulldozers. And so this would be a great opportunity, I believe, to correct the previous wrongs that we've been going through for the past decade.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That's a very substantial presentation. I appreciate your putting it together. Actually, could you put just the slides back up for a second? So let me ask you this, Coy. I believe that you were, at least when we met last time, you were participating in a pretty organized group, the Southwest. What was the name of that group?
Southwest Action.
And so is that, are you participating with that here, or is there another neighborhood group that's kind of coalescing around this?
Yeah, so Southwest Action is part of it, but this is, 4th and M is much bigger than Southwest Action. This is like a Southwest thing. And so Southwest Action would help with organizing, but they wouldn't be like, I don't know.
I understand. Okay. Yeah. They wouldn't be everything. So, and then I understand that you spoke with the chairman about this, and what kinds of things did you talk about with him as well, or what was his sort of feedback?
Essentially, it was the same thing. He asked if Charles Allen supported it, and we've been trying to get an answer out of Charles Allen. Charles Allen supports the community land trust model. He supports it at the fire truck repair station, which is another thing that we have going on in Southwest.
So I'm sorry, what was that project?
The fire truck repair station. So the fire truck repair station is
Engine 7.
Yeah, and so he wrote a letter to the deputy mayor supporting the CLT model at that site. We haven't heard from him on this. He hasn't specifically said he opposes it.
I understand. Okay.
That was mainly what we got from Mendelsohn. He didn't really. I think it was supposed to be like a 20-minute conversation. It wasn't a very long conversation, so we couldn't really get into.
Okay. And these are the kinds of questions that we ask generally whenever we face a project like this. I mean, primarily from my perspective, obviously the community's involved. I see the community here. I know that you participate heavily in the community. I'm obviously very familiar with the Douglas Land Trust, but it's just important for us to also ask about sort of the elected leadership, particularly like the ANC and the council member and things like that. And so, going to the land trust model, we actually, as you know, we're a proponent of it where applicable, including one of our equity RFPs, the Langston Slater RFP. We're actually working with the Douglas Land Trust. And so, the model is very interesting. It's certainly something that confers a lot of benefits and includes a lot of voices in the process that we like. We're working through, and I think Ginger can probably speak to this, we're working through the practicalities of these kinds of things. I mean, Douglas, I believe it was Douglas, came to us on some parcels in Ward 8 a couple years ago. And, they were talking about their model and we were talking about our models. And it's interesting because land trusts consider themselves perpetual models. And that is a nice feature of them, right? You put it into the trust and then you have surety that it's going to follow this, this perspective for basically in perpetuity. But, the government is also a perpetual organization, at least in terms of legal constructs. And so we do have to figure out things like covenants and things like that. Anyway, I don't want to get too granular because that's not really relevant here right now. In terms of this model, in terms of this project, there's obviously been a lot of interest in it. There's been a lot of communications around it. I think that, I like how you've laid out a couple of different options here with your primary option, your priority option as number one. I think that in terms of general questions, I would just wonder, and I was trying to pull up a map here. The developer, as you mentioned, went through a PUD process, and then they went through a PUD amendment process. And so the community benefits agreement that you're talking about went through that PUD process. And are you, what are you saying was the involvement, or you weren't involved, but do you feel like the community was involved, or what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I can only speak from my my experience and my perspective, but I followed this project as soon as the developer asked for the change to residential. I was on it because I had personally experienced a lot of joy in these lots, meeting other neighbors and being able to chill and not buy a $15 cocktail and be outside, all those benefits. And so I went to all the ANC meetings. I engaged our ANC councilman, our ANC
commissioner
representatives, and I never heard anything about the community center. I had never heard of a need for a community center. The Chairman Hood actually told the developer, who was Forest City at the time, to meet with me and my wife and another Southwest resident to go over our concerns. And we expressed the same thing to them, that we don't really need a community center. That's not, I don't think that's, they put it as like, well, you could have had more affordable housing, but the ANC wanted this community center. And, to me, I would have wanted more affordable housing for sure. So there wasn't any like community meetings about the community benefit agreement. There was no really It just came out of nowhere for me.
Well, let me do this, because that's the first I've heard of that. As I mentioned, I pulled up the zoning map, and I'll try to pull up the PUD. Let me run down a little bit more about what is contained in the community benefits agreement, and how they came to pass. Because to your point about letter C, that is something that we participate in. I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but we do participate in them. And then in terms of this overall, what I can tell you is that we have undertaken some preliminary analyses on the actual properties, because I believe either yourself or somebody else had sent us an email a couple of weeks back. And we need to follow up on what those are outlining. And then, primarily, I would think our next step is to reach out to the ward council member and really understand, overall what their indication is, what their feeling is on these parcels. I mean, I think something like letter C, that's very, as I said, it's something, you have to be kind of realistic about, well, not realistic, but there's different levels of power. There's different levels of leverage, obviously, as you know, that people have in these projects. I think that, if you did something like C, you'd want to lay it out a little bit, like really, what do you want to see? No pun intended. And then have that, to initiate the discussions. That said, I wouldn't go there immediately. Let's, circle back with the ward council member. Let's circle back with the chairman, which we will do internally. Let's figure out where the conversations have been, so we're not like all over the map, and we're kind of a unified front. And and we will, certainly continue to consider this. I mean, as I said, it's been something that we've heard a lot about. There's been a lot of community input on it, or input regarding these ideas, and so it's something that we need to track down.
Yeah, we're also aware that the PUD process is a whole thing, and that's been done for this lot, but that was years ago at this point. That was, and they've already extended that PUD once, and I think they're basically at or have already passed that limit and would need to basically extend it again or renew it or go through the whole process again. And I think that there's a lot of value in saying, okay, clearly some folks in the neighborhood feel like they didn't have say in the beginning, and also that was 2016, 2017, a lot has changed in Southwest, a lot has changed in the DC housing market since then. I think that there's a case to be made that people are using more outdoor space nowadays. There's a lot more value to outdoor spaces like that. And there's a lot of even greater need for truly affordable housing, and going beyond 8%. That's the bare minimum, and I think that we can really kind of boost something like that and create more value to the community, and not just value to a developer that's honestly been leaving these lots kind of fallow for years. So I think that the PUD process, we know that has its very solidified kind of way to go, but we think that there's a need for more community engagement at this point, and some changes to make this better for everybody. Okay.
No, I hear that. So in terms of where the PUD, I just opened up the file on this. The PUD is actually active, and they have until I'm just reading this real quick since the court decision. They have until February 24th, 2024 to file the building permit, and until 2025 to begin construction in order to stay current with their PUD. Okay, so it's active right now. So again, as I said, let me run down. I'm sorry. Do you have a question?
I'm just curious. I'd love to have you email, a link or whatever to that, because I've been doing some research to try and find out what the date was for that, expiration, when they'd have to go through that. I wasn't able to find what you're speaking of. So
okay. Yeah. As I said, I'll run down the latest on the PUD, and including how the community benefits conversation went. And I think we can use that as sort of a benchmark for letter C here. And then on the other two letters, or the other two options, I should say, we'll follow up with the ward council member and the chairman to sort of understand what the conversations have been and get a sense of, what direction they'd like to see. And then, we can follow up, or we can, start that conversation. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a little comment before we go. I don't want to be spoken, but the option C leaves it in the hands of the developer, and the problem is, from a district-wide viewpoint, what you should have is that they work with market rate, and that never gives us what we need. It never gives us what we need. So what we're urging is that you pay attention to option A and social housing and other things that would leave the property in the hands of the government or the community, and eliminate all the profits going to some developer who walks away and doesn't even live in the district. So what we need is a change. So I support entirely the work that's going on in Southwest, but what we see is the errors repeating themselves, and the Office of DemPed is leading us down the wrong path. That's my contribution here.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I can appreciate that you have those opinions.
I want to tell you that I'm also on the steering committee of the DC Grassroots Planning Coalition, and so I have a viewpoint of the whole city and some of the problems that we've surfaced on development. The problem with development in the hands of developers is that it leads to gentrification. 8% is not enough, and it doesn't even, the 8% may be 80% of the AMI, which is not going to give us what we need. Thank you for your attention.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think we have good follow-ups. Did Ginger? I didn't know if you looked like you wanted to say something or no.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to underscore the work that has been done around community engagement, and so while it has been led by COI and others with Southwest Action, and you're right, they have done a fantastic job. They're an incredible group of folks organizing all around Southwest, and I'm sure you saw the number of people, or if you haven't, you can take a look, COI, forward over the number of people, or Lee, the number of people that have signed on to that petition. So it's just
I saw it.
It's invigorating, right? To see that kind of work. And then I would just also say that they have I don't know if I may have missed it, but COI and others have given presentations and been in conversation with a variety of ANC members, the Southwest bid. So really reaching out to other partners to find out what else, like what are some concerns, and so already kind of jumping into this idea of what would you like to see here, and what are your thoughts around this development progressing. And the final thing that I'll just say is, I think, Sarosh, we have had this conversation already, but just to refresh, the option A and B are not mutually exclusive, right? So you can have CLTs. There are existing regulatory agreements right now in DC that have covenants running concurrently, both with a CLT or another organization, and DC government. And there are even concurrent leases that can run side by side. So there's,
absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely.
No, and I appreciate your flexibility and your team's flexibility as we work through the issues on our other projects together, and that's been really important. And so as I said, I am conceptually very interested in CLTs. I think that they do serve a really tremendous purpose in this capacity. Let me go back and follow up on the items I discussed, and then I can reach back out to COI, I guess, as maybe the central point, and then we can understand what next to do. Okay?
Excellent. Well, thanks again for taking the time, and if you could also send the recording when you get a chance, that'd be great as well.
I will. I'll save it somewhere, and I'll send it. If it's too big, we'll figure out a way to get it to a Dropbox or something.
Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you again for taking the time and listening to us.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. We'll talk soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right.
Thank you, COI. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.